Hey everyone, and welcome to another Explainer. Today, we are going to objectively break down a really fascinating and, honestly, highly opinionated piece of source material. It's a video that attempts to draw a direct, unbroken line between ancient caveman survival tactics and modern-day internet drama. Now, whether you totally agree with its premise or find it super controversial, the argument itself is meticulously structured. So my goal today is to unpack it for you, piece by piece, from start to finish.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining the sisterhood phenomenon, then look at its supposed evolutionary roots and how that translates to modern solidarity. After that, we'll examine the specific tactics of blaming men, dive into a real-world case study with a TV call, and finally, wrap up with the psychology of reputation.
All right, Section 1, Defining the Sisterhood Phenomenon. Before we get into any of the modern examples, we first need to understand exactly how the source video defines its core premise. So, the source uses the Arabic term Hulf an-Nisa, which basically translates to the alliance of women, or simply put, sisterhood. But listen, it is absolutely crucial to understand that the creator isn't just talking about your standard friendship or everyday female empowerment here. Not at all. They are framing this as a deeply ingrained, almost biological bias. This theory presents a primal, unconditional alliance where women instinctively side with and defend one another against men, completely regardless of objective facts or who is actually at fault. It's presented as an automatic reflex, like it's not a conscious choice. To understand why this reflex allegedly exists, we really have to look back in time.
That brings us to Section 2, the evolutionary roots. Let's zoom out to prehistoric times to explore the anthropological claims the video uses to justify all this. And this slide brilliantly illustrates how the foundation of this argument relies heavily on evolutionary psychology. It basically divides ancient human survival into two distinct gender roles. On the left, you've got the historical role of men, hunting, working outside the immediate tribal camp. And on the right, the historical role of women, child-rearing and building extremely tight-knit interpersonal networks inside the tribe. The creator argues that because women were left together while the men hunted, they absolutely had to form a collective win together or lose together mentality just to survive. They depended on each other for everything, from childbirth to daily protection.
To back up this whole anthropological theory, the speaker actually asserts several specific scientific and biological claims to prove these protective roles are literally hardwired into human biology. First off, they claim women talk 3 times more than men because they evolved sophisticated communication centers in the brain specifically to build those necessary survival bonds. Second, they assert women are biologically superior at reading facial expressions, a trait evolved to monitor nonverbal infants. And third, they cite a U.S. study claiming women's brains react chemically to the sound of a crying baby, triggering a physical urge to care for it, while men's brains allegedly show no such chemical change. So the argument uses all this to insist that this female solidarity is an inescapable biological reality.
Moving on to Section 3, Modern Solidarity. Let's transition smoothly from the cavemen to the present day and see how this translates to the internet.
The video argues that this ancient survival mentality, that either we all win or we all lose bond, is still incredibly active today. The core argument here is that this instinct causes women to reflexively protect their group and, as a result, just automatically assume the man is at fault in literally any dispute. As an example, the theory cites divorce cases, alleging that if you speak to a divorced woman, her story will consistently frame the male partner as the sole guilty party. From the creator's perspective, modern feminism and daily interactions aren't new. They're just contemporary expressions of an ancient tribal survival strategy.
Which leads us to Section 4, Tactics of Blaming Men. Let's shift our focus to the digital age and look at the social media defense strategy.
The video actually maps out 3 highly specific, coordinated deflection tactics that women allegedly use on social media when a man publicly complains about a female partner. Say, for example, he claims she stole from him or cheated. Tactic 1, deflection via neutrality. They'll say, well, we must hear the other side of the story, implying the man as an unreliable narrator. Tactic 2, straight-up victim blaming. They will say, if there was good in you, this wouldn't have happened. And Tactic 3, which the creator actually calls the most dangerous, attacking his masculinity. They'll tell the guy, you are exposing your own honor and shame by speaking out publicly. The premise here is that these aren't just random isolated comments, but an instinctive, collective strategy used to silence male grievances and protect the sisterhood.
All right, Section 5. Case Study, the TV Call. Is this a live example of the theory in action? We are going to zoom in tightly on this one.
Let's break down the intense and super granular details of this live phone call to an advice host named Dr. Nadia. This is the exact scenario the distressed caller, a mother-in-law, presented on national TV. Her situation? Her son has been in jail for 10 months on a drug charge. She is crying, desperate, and seeking advice. The daughter-in-law's actions, however, are the real focus here. The mother-in-law claims her daughter-in-law was caught cheating with a man who literally jumped from a balcony to escape. And it gets crazier. She says they confronted her, made her swear an oath, and actually recorded her confessing to the infidelity.
You can absolutely hear the profound emotional distress in the mother-in-law's voice. She tells the host, "I treat her like my daughter. We're in a fire in the house. We don't know how to make her leave." She is clearly seeking guidance on how to navigate this massive familial betrayal. Keep this desperate plea for help in mind because it sets up a remarkably sharp contrast for what happens next.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Dr. Nadia's reaction. She does not comfort the mother-in-law, and she doesn't condemn the cheating daughter-in-law. Instead, she completely deflects the blame. She actually scolds the mother-in-law, saying, "Why did you bring his brothers into this? That is a scandal." Then, she shifts the blame entirely onto the jailed son. She states, "He brought this disaster on himself. Who left the wife in this situation?"
So the source heavily relies on this stark juxtaposition to make its point. On the left, we have the expected reaction, right? You'd expect someone to condemn a woman who clearly confessed to infidelity while living in her mother-in-law's home. But on the right, the reality of the call. The female host instinctively defends the cheating wife, aggressively blames the jailed husband for abandoning her, and urges the family to cover up the scandal to protect the woman's reputation. For the original creator, this is definitive, absolute proof that the sisterhood instinct completely overrides objective morality and plain facts.
This brings us to our final analytical section. Section 6. The Psychology of Reputation Defense. Why the fierce denial? So, the really big question here is, why? Why does a professional TV host defend a clearly guilty party so fiercely on live television? Why try to cover up the scandal instead of just addressing the wrongdoing? The creator's explanation for this goes right back to the cave. Let's walk through the creator's dramatic evolutionary theory step by step. Step 1. In the prehistoric era, if a woman's promiscuity or moral failing was exposed to the group, it wasn't just a minor social faux pas. Step 2. The consequence was permanent exile from the safety of the tribe. Step 3. The result of that exile was essentially a death sentence, immediate death by wild animal attacks or starvation, because women traditionally could not hunt or survive alone. So the theory argues that protecting a woman's reputation was historically a literal matter of life and death, hardwiring a reflex to just deny any guilt and cover up scandals at all costs. Ultimately, this brings us to the video's core thesis. The conclusion that what we might interpret today as modern media bias or malicious victim blaming of men is actually just a prehistoric survival reflex playing out right on our screens. Whether it's a messy social media comment section or a live television advice show, the premise is that women are subconsciously acting to prevent another woman from facing tribal exile. So, they've built this incredibly fascinating, deeply controversial bridge all the way from ancient anthropology to daytime TV. But what should you take away from this? Next time you look at the interactions you see online every day, ask yourself, is this unconditional defense truly an inescapable, ancient survival instinct wired into human biology, or is it simply modern social media bias and groupthink? I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.